this your day. We're taking this your journey. And we want pay homage to our ancestors. Nani and Zinga, Malcolm X, Haj Malik Shabazz, Harry Tubman, Mandelani, oh, Bishop Henry Neal Tanner, all them, Gullah Geechee, Demark Vesey, who, yeah, turn back, yeah, turn wrong, tall. Even when the other rest of people say, the dog that came, the gun did it, the worker ain't coming for honor children, they're not turn back, tall. The crack teeth for truth, and our we want to. So this your day, we pay homage to honor, as we say, Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Well, thank you to all the 100 children with a join. We one more again right you on zooming in on sustainability. If one ain't know who this shall be, this shall the Queen quit. Head upon the body of the Gullah Geechee Nation. So glad if I say one more again, happy Black History Month to all the 100 children. But you know what? He ain't care what day the year 100 the Yeti this year. It's still a Black History Month. Long as we day upon the earth, the churn of Mother Africa, every day. A day for we celebrate who we be, but it always a day for celebrate Black history. And care if one of the crack your teeth so anything like that this year, or one to say, Mengadef, if one of the did it, Yona and thing like that, and then switch up some and say, que pasa, como está ustedes? Like some 7 family to do anything like that, Yona in their house or the home, place like that, and thing like that. We ain't care where one of the be if one to know who one of the on this journey, what we call life, you see. Now we know that thing ain't easy. After all of what Hunter might done dear true. And that a part of why some we chill and crack it down. He ain't know what to do. So when you get it, you hear them talking like this. And more often than not, when you hear our people speaking like this, that are the children of Mother Africa, it's by design. It usually has a link and a connection to their encounters with others, of course, from Europe, that at some point in time felt that this tongue was greater than the tongue that the Creator had given us to speak as African people. Well, some of us have gone so far that we also not only have stopped speaking in our own tongue, we don't speak to one another. Many times, if we're in the same place as children of Mother Africa, one might only see folk do this. And that's it. But at least that's enough for us to know that there's some salute to the divinity within the brother or sister that is there in that same place and in that same space. So we thought it not robbery to take this opportunity on zooming in on sustainability to address something that is critical to the continuing existence of the children of Mother Africa and Mother Africa herself. And that is about Black representation amidst systemic racism. Now, many people think when you say systemic racism, you need only be talking about the United States of America. I've traveled to all except 2 continents. I would have finished those other continents had it not been for Rona, the run all wrong and things like that to make everybody for sit down. So I have these 2 to go that are on my agenda. Been to all 50 states of the US, but going to other countries then makes you have more of a perspective on what happens that isn't just happening in the place that you may have grown up, that you're more familiar with. When we talk about systemic racism, it's not just a US phenomenon. It's a global, you think there's a pandemic? That has been the global pandemic. To the point where the genocide of African people on the earth has been fueled by racism. It has been pushed, it's been financed, It's been perpetuated, and it's been so ingested by some people of African descent that even when they're used as tools to destroy other movements of African people, they don't even realize they're being used. And in a world now where we're connecting through electronic devices and not connecting directly underneath the oak tree and things like that, but yet it one another, but yet it elders, yet it them will hold upon the tradition, cracky teeth and things like that, all kind of thing that going true. Crack it down, rock up, and then tell them to think that down. Not at all. So there's a lot of misinformation that's being spread. And trust me, not anti-technology. I actually hold a computer science degree, graduated with 3.909 average in my major, which is computer science and mathematics. Okay, double major. I have no issue with technology. What I know is the truth about technology, that you can program it to program people. That's what we do. So those of us who are technologically oriented from the what we call the backside of it, that do the programming languages, that put out the things, we tend not to stay plugged in all day. And we tend not to buy into everything we see online. But I've watched some very interesting turn of events lately where others who have created this whole field of altars of ego that are social media have made it clear now they realize they created a monster. And they don't let their children get chased by the monster. They don't let their children have phones. Even though they're teenagers, if they have them for a few minutes a day, and then they have to put them away. They're not allowed to constantly have them on their person. They're not given those in elementary school to walk around with. They have them engaging with people. They have them reading books. They have them thinking, discerning, because that has been an issue for generations already. Who could discern? Who could see, you see, who we really be as African people, as Black people? Unfortunately, media and now social media has driven a lot of what we tend to believe, and a lot of which I would refute, given my travels, given my life experience. There are Black people that work together. There are Black people who are proud of themselves. There are Black people who will put their lives on the line, that are still alive, that put their lives on the line. Not just all the ones that we held up as iconic martyrs that were part of movements. But the movement now is to put young people who especially don't have a lot of financial resources in the habit of getting online to try to create their own videos and create their own audiences for them to disparage Black leaders and then misrepresent what they think they're representing to their own generation, and then discard whose information they're looking through, who mentored them, discard actual physical relationships in real life. Now, that is the new element of COINTELPRO. If you don't know what that is, I advise, if you look into American Story, look at that. Because we can't talk about Black History Month and not talk about the COINTELPRO operations that have gone on to attempt to stop every Black movement there ever was. We cannot start a discussion like this without it invoking, in my mind, Patrice Lumumba, Stephen Biko, people whose stories really have not been pushed in the mainstream and definitely not provided in schools. Folks like Martin Delaney. When you see a story told in America during Black History Month, it often is one that someone comes back with a counter. So you want to pit Martin Luther King against Malcolm X, not talk about when they met together. And there weren't any recordings of that meeting. Just a picture of them coming out the room, smiling together and shaking hands. You don't talk about how W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington had any points where they connected. You don't talk about people like Martin Delany or Bishop McNeil Turner. You don't talk about any of these people. And I know some of y'all say, how I'm going to talk with people I never heard of. Once again, because who's controlling that narrative? Who's giving you your leaders? And then when there are those who are really leading, you don't let the leader lead, like Eric B. and Rakim said. Follow the leader, let the leader lead. Because someone told you shouldn't hear what they're saying, as in the case of the Black Panther Party. So here it is that Bob Marley said, how long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Well, I often wonder, how long will there be those that assist in that? Whether it's through misinformation, misrepresentation, character assassination, or physical assassination. We have to concern ourselves as Black people, and people who are concerned that Black lives do matter need to concern yourselves about who is representing the Black people and how are they being represented. And if you see that someone is fueling division, that should be a critical point to bring you back to that homework assignment and go study COINTELPRO. It's always been part of that. Divide and conquer. You think that the film about Wakanda made billions of dollars because we didn't want to see us unified? Now here I'm coming to you from the real Wakanda, the Gullah Geechee Nation. But how many 100 children and yet people with this year? 4 day. So as Queen Quet, chiefess and head upon the body of the Gullah Geechee Nation, I have the opportunity to talk to a lot of people from a lot of walks of life that are the children of Mother Africa, and those who are allies with us that want us to be able to represent ourselves, that want us to keep our communities alive and thriving. And two people that I don't have to travel around the world to see and to talk with and to dialogue with are here with me today. These brothers are powerful. These brothers are those who tell the narrative of our story and not the mythology. And the first one I want to welcome back to Zooming In on Sustainability is Dr. Amir Jamal Ture, who is a native Gullah Geechee from Raicha, Enoshan County, where I be and thing like that. A family root stem from Hilton Head, yeah, and just golf balls come out the ground in Hilton Head because you put your hand in there. People see that thing come from there too. Okay. All right, Hilton Head and Savu, Savannah GA. Dr. Amir Jamal Ture is here with me, and also from going northward in the North Kakalaki, we bring back to Zooming In on Sustainability, Wilmington on Fire filmmaker, Christopher Everett. My brothers, peace, blessings, happy Black History Month, just happy Black love all the time month. Got nothing, as the song go, I got nothing but love for you, baby. I got nothing but love for you, honey. It's so good to have y'all both here. It is a blessing. And this is the month to take care of your heart health too. So I'm glad y'all here because I got nothing but love beating in my heart for y'all. Peace and blessings, Dr. Ture. Assalamu alaikum.
Peace and blessings. Yes, ma'am. We're right here in the house. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, brother Christopher. What going on up in North Kakalaki, bro?
Oh, nothing much, nothing much. Some lovely, beautiful weather here today. So yeah, I'm loving it. And thank you for having me on today. I appreciate it.
Yes, I was looking forward to this. So y'all already heard me talking about this, and I'm gonna go ahead and throw out a couple names and let's get going about Black representation in every generation. We had folks back yonder, as one might say, right around Civil War time, during the Civil War and all that. We had a very outspoken man named Martin Delany. Reconstruction, we also had a very outspoken man that you've done a lot of work about, Brother Christopher, Alex Manley. I want to give Dr. Ture the starting point. When you hear the name Martin Delany, what comes to your mind if I say Martin Delany and Black representation?
Now I'm gonna tell you what's so funny. I didn't even know you were gonna be talking about Martin Delany, because guess what? I'm looking at an article about Martin Delany and Robert Campbell. about with regard to immigration, with regards to Africa and Central and South America and the Caribbean. So when I hear Delaney, I think about Delaney talking on continental and rural streets, letting it be known that we got to have our own nation. So again, even before people talking about the Nation of Islam and others, Delaney was talking about that, and Robert Campbell also. Again, these two seminal figures with regards to our understanding about autonomy, about independence, and that's what they were pushing and promoting during that time period in 1800s. So again, Delaney is one of those major forces that we got to recognize, got to acknowledge, but also Robert Campbell was right there with them. And they talk about when you got Black folks who are actually in the 1800s talking about what they plan on doing. They want enterprising Black men to go to Africa and grow free, as they say, free form, free growing cotton in Africa, and then ship it into Europe to undermine the South with regards to growth of cotton. So this is the type of stuff that I'm saying, dynamic brothers and sisters making it happen. So I'm saying mad love, and mad respect for them.
Yeah, that's very powerful that you brought that in, because of course the counter narrative was the, drop your bucket where you are. Like, where you going? You don't leave, you stay here, right? And so we often we don't hear about Martin Delaney, right? We don't really hear about Campbell. We hear more about, if we hear anything, we hear about Booker T. Washington, right? And we hear about him saying, well, no, stay here and learn, how to be domestics for the women, and, how to be maybe butlers and farm hands and things like that for the men, and to stay on the land where you already are, but just hone your skills, right?
But let me go through this out there. That tell you what's so interesting about this. Here go Delaney them and that Campbell them. And here go Coates and other people who were saying this in 1800s. This is during the time of captivity and other periods. They're saying we need to undermine the cotton in the South. But guess what happened in the 1900s? Booker T. Washington now goes to Hilton Head, and they want to create an experiment of growing cotton on Hilton Head Island to now go and use that with regards to growing cotton in Togo, because the German government basically had an agreement with Booker T. them to come over there and then have them grow cotton in Togo. And I tell folks, that's the first Tuskegee experiment. I just throw that out there to hit people with that, but most people didn't realize that. So then he wanted to do that on Hilton Head, but he had such a negative view to people on Hilton Head. But then they still, we're going forward with regard to that cotton experiment in Togo. But here go Delaney them saying that back in the 1800s.
Right. And see, that's another thing. And see what you just did. And that's why I fed that in there, because a lot of people don't realize that both Martin Delaney and Booker T. Washington were here in the Gullah Geechee Nation. We're here in Beaufort County, South Carolina. Again, I went to school in Beaufort County, South Carolina. You went to school right next door in the Coastal Empire. Now, I don't know about your classes, but they sure ain't never mentioned to us that Booker T. Washington was anywhere around here, even though we have him on the wall, on a building right here on St. Helena Island. Okay, they don't mention that in school. They only tell you, oh, he was the founder out there at Tuskegee, where I've spoken many times. And like you said, but this cotton and growing this Sea Island cotton in Togo was the real first Tuskegee experiment, and an experiment in economic empowerment, global economic empowerment for people of African descent. Powerhouse.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Delaney is right there in Beaufort. He's discussing about independence of African people. So that's right again, they're right there. And also just throw it out there, because the part of, I went to Beaufort County school system too, on Hilton Head Elementary. So, okay. but again, that's not part of the conversation. That's information that we had to garner with regards to us doing our constant research with regards to us and our story. Being a JLA and then making up connections, pulling together for people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, as you know, I love to write. So when we start talking about not only the JLA position that we honor, because oral history in African tradition is what's honored. It's Western society that says the oral is to be devalued and the written is the only of value. The oral tradition, the power position, one might call it, in the community of the Jele Musa, some say use the word griot. These are critical positions. These are not positions. They're not the same thing. I have to keep reminding people. They're not the same thing as storytellers. Okay. Storytellers are for the entertainment genre, one might say, in the American vernacular, where we're talking about people of honor who are the living embodiment of the village's story when we talk about the Jele Musa, and the griot. But now here, because our people realize and recognize, oh, to get the word out and have that word respected, we're going to have to start writing. Some of us started not only writing books and journaling, but printing newspapers. So let's talk about Alex Manley and what happened when he started talking about these same kind of issues in his newspaper, Brother Christopher, right there in Wilmington, North Kakalaki. What happened? When did he actually start his newspaper? Tell the folks what it was called, and then tell them what was the critical thing that started happening when folks realized, hey, wait a minute, this black man owned a whole newspaper and these black people are reading it. What happened with that?
Well, Alex Manley, anytime anyone looks up anything about the Wilmington Massacre of 1898, you see this picture, it's even in my background right now, of Alex Manley's newspaper press destroyed by the white mob during the 1898 massacre. But Alex Manley, he was a black man in Wilmington, and he actually owned and ran the Wilmington Daily Record, which was a daily black-owned newspaper in Wilmington during this time. In the 1890s in Wilmington, North Carolina. He was heavily involved in politics in the city of Wilmington. He was also an advocate of entrepreneurship as well in the Black community in Wilmington. But he also used his newspaper as a voice to talk about the pressing issues, not only folks in Wilmington, but throughout North Carolina and the rest of the country as well. And it was pretty much considered during that time one of the very few daily Black-owned newspapers in the country during this time. And he had advertisers from white folks and Black people during this time. But what I guess was the turning point for him when he wrote a very controversial article during this time, I guess a rebuttal article that Rebecca Felton, she once, made a speech in Savannah, Georgia, called Women on the Farm, pretty much telling white men to rise up. These Black men are out here raping white women, and it's up to y'all to really protect white womanhood. And so Alex Manley writes a rebuttal, article in his paper about it, and pretty much saying that, Black men aren't raping white women. Actually, white women are actually having consensual sexual relations with African-American men. And also they're very fond of mulatto men like himself as well. And so a lot of this stuff was very controversial at the time. The people that were behind the 1898 massacre were already plotting to do something like the massacre, but they needed something to stick and really put in the minds of white society. So they used that article, and then they used their newspapers at the time was really like the more of white supremacy type of propaganda they were putting out there. So they used that article to really fuel the fire, not only throughout Wilmington, but throughout the state of North Carolina as well. And I know even where you guys are from, South Carolina, what was Ben Tillman? Yep. He even made a comment about that article. Pitchfork Tillman. Yeah, he actually, I saw a newspaper article when I was researching. He actually came up to North Carolina to do a speech about white supremacy with some of the folks that were, initiating this massacre. And he pretty much called out Alex Manley and told the folks in Wilmington that, if that, N-word Alex Manley was in South Carolina, he would have got hung a long time ago. So you saw, that kind of slip over into South Carolina, and even got folks in South Carolina riled up, And so, it was a big thing. And that really led to the massacre that happened on November 10th, 1898. And it pretty much silenced the Black voice in that city until some years later, when you had the Wilmington Journal come along, which was just a weekly newspaper, and it did what it's had to do. And recently, they've even been going through some financial hard times, and they recently had a telethon to really save that paper. But really, the voice of the Black community in Wilmington was really destroyed because Alex Manley was really taking a stand, and the white supremacist movement at the time had to silence that.
Yeah, it's interesting. You brought up a couple of points I want to touch on. One, with this lynching and that common narrative
Right.
of a white woman was raped by a black man. There
Right.
are thousands of black men that were lynched and tens of thousands using that same storyline. And Ida B. Wells, as we know, who was also a Southerner, God bless the dead, she had to end up running from the South because they were going to lynch her because she used the newspaper as well.
Right.
She was a writer and she would go ahead and refute these narratives and actually go and investigate what had taken place. And then she would write about these things. And then for years, she documented the names of who was getting lynched. And then many of you, if you were to look up lynching, if you Google it and look at images, you may see flags that are hanging outside of buildings that were up north that just said a man was lynched today, because they would do that as a campaign to also make sure that our folks who had left the South during the Great Migration and been north didn't lose sight of what was still happening to their own people. And so we also have somebody who was critical with the newspapers and representation that again was from the Georgia coast. So we got Robert Abbott, that started the Chicago Defender. And a lot of people, they look up the history of Chicago, of course, you're going to find his name. But do you realize he's Gullah Geechee? And do you realize once again that here we had someone that had a newspaper as a vehicle to represent who we be and to say this is what's going on, and even economically here's some opportunities. So if you are in a situation sharecropping down south, you got that newspaper because when the Pullman car porter slipped it to you, you know, whatever, when they got into town, they were carriers of this newspaper. They brought it, they transmitted it all over the country. Folks would see the ads in the back, the classified ads that then said somebody might have been looking for a live-in at the time, you know, but they knew there were jobs. There might be factories that are willing to hire anybody, that they will go up and then they get these jobs. And so they really give him and the Chicago Defender a lot of credit for fueling the Great Migration or assisting with it, where people ended up moving northward en masse. But now, when we talk about using these vehicles at the time, newspapers, now the internet, you know, blogs and so forth, the Black representation has to be leveraged into political clout. That's what Ida B. Wells and those were doing with the campaigns they were doing. But just as Dr. Teray, you can speak to this as well. You know full well when the Gullah Geechee Nation stood on our human right to self-determination, and global newspapers, magazines, and radio shows covered that a group of Black people in North America had finally stood up and declared themselves a nation, an actual nation with land, with their own language, with their own leader, with their own constitution, with their flag, only one flag we have. Okay. Then all of a sudden, here came the pushback. Here came the censorship. Here came people whispering to some of us to say why, before we could get stories in their paper about what we were doing to uplift the community, unite the community, and now we couldn't get those stories because even if they had been Black newspaper owners, they now had gotten certain phone calls, or they had now had these mysterious people show up at their newspaper saying, well, don't cover Queen Quet, don't cover the Gullah Geechee Nation, and everything will be fine, you know, and these kinds of things. So when we talk about representation, even in writing, as a scholar yourself, Dr. Teray, how does that play into that with political clout and economic power?
Well, with regards to, again, I throw out a common proverb that I use with people, that the hunter will always be the hero of the story until the lion has a historian. And so with regards to that, that we are the lions and we've been listening to the story of the hunter and we buy into that. And then also I threw out another proverb that I share with folks, a mosquito will teach an elephant to be a mosquito.
Mhm.
A mosquito will not teach an elephant to be an elephant. And so here you go, elephants walking around here thinking that they're mosquitoes, doing things that are unnatural, buying into the story of other people about the oppression, that again, we're not standing up and fighting on behalf of who we are, because some of us are afraid, just like you threw it out there, Queen, that some of us are afraid. But I also, you know what I talked about, but also some of us do it based on egos because we're not jealous and envious because somebody else is going forward. My thing, I tell folks, we should never take any joy in the pain and anguish of our people. When our people are excelling, we take joy with regards to that. But when they have some anguish, they have some pain, we don't take joy with regards to that because that's a part of the sickness to take us off our course.
Mhm.
Our course is to excel. Our course is to put the information out there. Our job is to put it out there in writing, through social media platforms, through any way that we can to give the information. Because we're gonna say, hey, listen, it's a luta continua. The struggle continues, and the struggle continues because we need more good people out there putting the word out. And that's why I tell folks, good people also often sit to the side and they're silent. And they sit silent, and then that oppression continues. Or then they try to tell us these Western values about turning the other cheek and just leaving it alone. I'm like, no, no, no. I said, most I put you here to fight for what's right and stand on the truth. And so that's what it's about. It's about us now making sure we put the truth out. That's why I say with Brother Christopher Everett, the brother Wilmington on Fire, that again, talking about Alex Manley, I had my folks look at that and check that out. Because I want people to understand, yo, check this out. Wilmington was a major economic center for us. And that with regards to that, when they now go and attack Wilmington, that's attacking all of us. That it's not just Tulsa, it's Wilmington, it's Durham. We are not looking at it. When y'all talked about it, and that what I tell you, the entire state of North Carolina, they not use that to not go ahead and further their racism and their hatred. So that's why now it becomes crucial and important for us to tell this story, for us to talk about this story. It's now up for us to want to be the lions to finally put it out there. As Garvey said, there are many lion cubs in the bush. And I'm like, hey, it's time for the cubs, because the cubs are no longer cubs. They're not lions, and they're coming out. And I need them elephants, to be mighty and majestic, and they make sure they are stomping with regards to what the truth is.
Mm-hmm. And see, that's the point, that word, truth. Because one of the things that has happened, and me being a computer scientist, I'm always trying to get folks to realize this. Just because you have a platform, you still have an option on what you use that platform for. So you can tell truth or you can tell myths. Now, like you just stated, a mosquito can only train an elephant to be a mosquito, not to be an elephant. So that's the same thing when it comes to the different aspects of Black culture. We are not monolithic culturally. So if someone is someone that has never lived a particular tradition, that's not the authority on that tradition. Now you can say, oh, I'm born right here. Yeah, you might have been born in this particular environment, but then never were acculturated to that tradition. So a prime example here in the Gullah Geechee Nation, and we grew up on the islands, you grew up working out in the field. You grew up learning the poisonous bush from the healing bush, okay? Because sometimes they can look awfully close together. You learn this, why? Because you had to learn respect. You had to respect the elders. The elders showed you the way. Now, you can just go a few miles up the road, across a bridge or two, people are acculturated differently because they're growing up in a Western society in the urbanized areas. So they're more American than they are African. So instead of communal, they're competitive. And so now the internet is fueling this competition for likes, competition for views, competition and building ego altars for egos. Instead of alter egos, they have altars for their egos that are all over the internet, that instead of seeking the truth, people just want this much information, a tiny little bit, and then they want to run with it and make it into something else that is not, without the totality of the story, with all the aspects of what makes nationhood. Like you mentioned, Martin Delaney has spoken about what we have here in the Gullah Geechee Nation. So when we start talking about Black representation nowadays, are there any things, because I know Dr. Teray, I know Brother Christopher, you both encounter young people, especially the fact that you all use videos to also share these stories like I do. How would you tell them, or what would you tell them are steps that they need to take to actually verify information and give citation for that information, as opposed to thinking, oh, I just go snatch this off his video, snatch that off his video, do a video of my own and stand here thinking I'm an expert, because that disseminates things in a way that does not give the totality of who we are as Black people in representation. What would you say to that, Brother Christopher? Because I know a lot of folks are like, well, he a filmmaker, I want to make films, or well, I do my own little videos, you know. So what about the work behind the film, the research behind the film?
Yeah. It's definitely, you know, you got to do your work, you got to do your research, you know, because as filmmakers, you know, we're not like historians per se. So, you know, when I did Wilmington on Fire, you know, I reached out to folks like yourself, Professor Sandy Darity, Lorraine Umfleet, who actually wrote the state report about the Wilmington massacre, and also Dr. Lewin Manley, who was the grandson of Alex Manley. So I wanted to get direct descendants as well, who had those personal stories that you might can't find in a book. You know, these are stories that were passed down that he heard from his parents and grandparents, you know, who actually were there. So you want to get a combination of all of that. You know, you want to get some thorough historians who have studied, have written books, articles about this topic. They teach on it. I mean, you also want to get, you know, some folks who they're actually descendants of these folks that you're talking about as well. And so it's just a combination of all that. Even before you do a film, I think we took like about 2 years of just researching and pre-interviewing people and doing all of that and just cross fact checking and all that stuff. So it takes, it's you have to do a lot of research even before you even do the film process, you know. And it just takes time, and people just have to be patient, you know, when you do it. But it's worth it, you know, because you're just going to make a better film and a better quality film, and people will really understand what you're talking about. And also people won't be able to I guess, to debunk you as well and try to just shut you down. You know, you'll really, you know what you're talking about. And so that's, to me, those are the steps, especially if you want to do documentary work.
Definitely. And that shutdown goes back to that word propaganda. I want to give that one to Dr. Teray. Why don't you talk about how these tools have been used to shut down Black movements by just turning things into propaganda?
Well, you know, we see it constantly. We see how, again, we let people bash us with regards to who we are, and movements like, again, and, you know, just like now, not to say I'm jumping on the bandwagon, that the story of Fred Hampton, I tell folks, and I teach this in a class called Universal Justice, and again, and this with basically Caucasians. I go and talk about Fred Hampton. I talk about what Fred Hampton represented, that he represented the struggle of human rights, and that he was able to pull folks together, pull poor Caucasians together, Latinos and Africans together. And so what's going on, that the system, and Queen Quinn talked about COINTELPRO, the system is not realizing something. And I tell folks, this actually goes back in time, that the powers to be in the United States realize something. You cannot let poor people come together. If poor people come together, they will realize who's oppressing them, and they will come against those oppressors. And those oppressors are the people who have the money. And so what happened? Poor Caucasians, they'll separate them, so then that way they don't join with the Africans and the Latinos and the Native people. And that goes back to Bacon's Rebellion. They don't want the Native people and poor Caucasians and Africans getting together, because they will realize these are people oppressing us, and we're going to change the dynamic. So here goes Fred Hampton, 1960s, now doing this, engaging in this, that he now brings about the real Rainbow Coalition. It is not Jesse Jackson, it is Fred Hampton. So then we go to another part of the Panthers. We go to California. What they now representing out there in Oakland, they're now representing watching what the police are doing. Now we talk about, today we have our videotapes, but here go the Panthers right there on the scene, making that happen. Then we talk the Deacons of Defense. We look at them, and then people now getting concerned that these Black men are now saying that they're going to defend themselves, and it's not just going to be a narrative of we turn the other cheek, we sing Kumbaya, that we get along easily. Now I'm telling people, no, as you called it out, you need to have a Malcolm there, an Honorable Elijah Muhammad. You would need to have a Jerry Moser with the Shrine of the Black Madonna. You would need to have for us to even have elevation. That is not one group. It is that they now got to look at the totality of that group and now understand, like, we might need to negotiate with them. Because King even used that with Reverend Jose Williams, because Jose Williams gets his start in the Gullah Geechee area. And what King had, like I tell folks, King had liked the sexiness of Reverend Jose Williams and Ben Clark, them, because they were agitated, they were engaging in what some people might say nonviolence. They were out there. And so then he would have them modify, but King had liked that because he understood that helps them ultimately. So, but we get the story thrown at us to be all passive, to not have any voices with regards to demanding equality and human rights. Saying again, and Queen Quet, I have to go back in time. One of the things that we discussed early on, it's no longer about civil rights for us, it's about human rights for us.
Right.
And
Exactly.
again, it's a network of human rights, and that people now understand it. We got to stand up for it, and that the struggle of African people tied to human rights, the struggle for Native people tied to human rights, the struggle of Latinos tied to human rights, the struggle for Asian people tied to human rights, the struggle for poor Caucasians tied to human rights. But we got other people direct us. And then leadership that we had within our community that was on that path, we let the propagandists, again, the hunter, go and write these stories that are absolutely false. And then some of us sitting back being silent about it. That's why now it's crucial for younger brothers and sisters who now want to get involved in this. And that's why I said some of them, I'm going to be frank with you. Some of them say that they're filmmakers. It's just like some of the other ones, filmmakers. That means like you ain't doing shit. Oops, I'm sorry. But you ain't doing nothing. It's just a game. It's you playing a game. It's not. You're not really being a voice for the conduit for our change. We need people who are going to be about to change in all aspects of our lives. That's from the sanitation worker to the person that's a politician. We need you all involved in the change of our lives, and then not building on the narratives of these other people saying that our communities want to be torn up, our communities want to not be safe or be environmentally safe. That's incorrect. Brothers and sisters who are doing the sanitation work can tell you, no, we see what Black people want and we know what they want, and they want to have the same type of community when we go over on that south side or go into that Ardsley Park. We want that. That's what they want, the same thing too. And that we need to have the people who stand up there making sure that our people are treated fairly and equally with regards to all aspects, from economics to education to culture to art to politics to, again, to spirituality.
Yes. So now let's talk about that point about standing up for our people. So you're talking about a unifying message of global unity, because when we talk about human rights, and whenever I'm in the Human Rights Commission fighting for who we be, I'm there with people who are passionate, just like me, about this, because literally our lives depend on it. And even as we enter or leave those doors, our lives are in jeopardy, fighting for this global unity, global equality. And that is the whole crux of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Well, what do you do when you have groups of Black people who are fully assimilated, who, as I would say, done drank the Kool-Aid, and I don't mean in a good way, all right? And they actually are espousing a narrative of disruption, division. As you know, you mentioned Fred Hampton, like you said, not jumping on a bandwagon, but let's use this as an example. This latest movie, Judas and the Black Messiah. We know that's not the full story. That's somewhat of the Hollywood microwave short version, Cliff Notes kind of part of what really took place, and a very minute part of a microcosm of what took place with the Black Panther Party and the Deacons of Defense, where they got the Black Panther symbol from in the first place. But here it is that you have this brother who played the role. As I said to you before we got on the air today, he's now in the media because he's saying he needs therapy behind even having played that role. My thing, if I could talk directly to the brother, would be, was not just that role. Look at the role you played in Get Out. At what point do we get out of the thought pattern of the crabs in a barrel, the crabs in a bucket, to be able to keep the people engaged in movements that are upward movements and forward movements, if they are constantly caught up instead in what Flavor told them, don't believe the hype. They're believing the hype of misinformation against other Black people. And that's the same propaganda that has always been used over and over. That is people that look like they ought to be in the movement for human rights with other Black people, that then fuel negative narratives or don't even comprehend the spiritual impact when you do work against your own people and you work to get people killed, you work to character assassinate, there is a return on that investment too. That which ye sow, ye shall also reap. What would you say to that, Dr. Torrey?
Well, you said we have to call them out, because what happened, the signs are there. And folks talked about that when we have these infiltrators within our groups, these infiltrators sometimes begin to share information with some people that is negative with regard to our effort, our noble effort. And so, but what occurs again is that some of us then sit silent. I tell folks, once them infiltrators, once those people now give a negative point or negative seed with regard to our movement, we now need to call them to task on it and then remove them from our body. We don't forgive them with regards to that. That these brothers and sisters involved in the movement, they discuss stuff like that, how they went and talked to people about committing felonies and other things like that. So then that way they will not be around. Just like with regards to Malcolm, they're going to discuss like, hey, wait a minute, like my job was to basically get some of his loyal followers, some of his loyal brothers, get them out of it and plant the seed in them to go commit a felony. That again, it was induced by the hunter with regards to this. And I might tell folks, yo, we got to stand up to them. And as soon as that person comes, that negative energy comes, that negative vibe comes, that negative information, we got to address them squarely and then do it with the whole body. So that now we all now sit down and look and now address them, and that we don't let them just fly by, because again, they ultimately will be the cancer to destroy us. And that's why I said we don't sit back with cancer. We try to eradicate cancer. And that's what we're about, eradicating the cancers that come amongst us. I tell people this quite frankly. I say, I don't care if 1,000 people tell you a lie. You know the truth. You speak on the truth. Because what eventually will happen, that some of the people who are listening to the lies, they'll start saying, wait a minute, that truth that he's speaking or she's speaking, that's kind of sensible. Then they'll come over to your side. But you got to keep the truth. And then what will happen? They'll start speaking the truth also. And then you see more of us. But that's why I say some of us just sit back and, we so caught up and to not want to have that heart. Because that's why I tell people, our ancestors, for us to be here, had to have some heart for us to be here. For them to survive all this, they had to have some heart. So I'm like saying right now, when are you going to have the heart?
That's perfect. That's perfect. And like I said, this Heart Health Month, so we here to heal some Black hearts today. So Brother Christopher, I know you had to have a heart to live still in North Carolina, to be a young Black man, and to go around back and forth between your home and the coast and Wilmington, shooting this film and uncovering some old wounds, pulling scabs off folks, pulling blinders off folks, pulling scales off folks' eyes. Because I know I've been to Wilmington many times, and you bring up Wilmington, 1898, and folks start, like they don't want to talk to you. You bring up, wasn't there mob violence here? People don't want to talk to you. So talk about that, because I know you're the generation kind of behind us. How you feel about what Dr. Torrey said, and then the heart, what kind of heart you had to have to even do the work you're still doing, because you're doing the second go round now with Wilmington on Fire Part 2.
Right. I definitely agree with them. You got to have heart, and that's what kept me going. Because, doing the first film was a challenge, struggling, for funding, all type of stuff, pushback. But I always thought about what my ancestors went through, them starting businesses and just living in this country in general. So I'm like, man, if they could go through that, I'm not really going through that much, so let me get my act together and figure out a way. And, and we made a way, and just getting the film out there, touring it, constantly trying to get, people to notice and pay attention. And it's tough, as a Black filmmaker, and then also trying to have an actual production company as well, because, there's a lot of stories that we want to tell, and that's where we try to help other people produce their films. We try to cover the spectrum. We're diving into the history of Black martial arts. We're doing that with the Grand Master Project. We have some things coming up. Like I was telling you earlier, we're doing a thing about Black architects and builders for North Carolina. So, we try to cover it all, but it's still difficult a lot of times, because I've even noticed that, a lot of white filmmakers, and I see it especially in the literary world, where the mainstream, media and stuff like that, they still elevate, white, documentarians that do, stories on our culture. And I see it more in the literary world as well, of a lot of, white authors writing books and stuff about our history and culture and getting elevated. And so it didn't bother me at one time, but now it's just starting to irritate me. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, it's really irritating me now. And, that's why I try to do what I'm doing, of trying to really own and control our narrative and also help other Black filmmakers as well. Like we helped and produced Brother Ricky Kelly, his documentary about the 2 bike weeks that go on in Myrtle Beach, Black Beach, White Beach. So we got behind that project and helped that brother get his project made, and it's out there in the world. It's on BET Plus right now, Amazon Prime. And so, I try to do what I can do. I can't do, I have the resources that I have, and that's why I want people to support me, because if you support me, we can do and help, more filmmakers tell these stories, Black filmmakers tell these stories, and really get our history and our narrative out there. So I think it goes 2 ways. I think we got to support, people that are doing the work. We also got to open up our minds as well and really see the propaganda that they're trying to push on us.
Absolutely. And that some of us are participating and pushing. So like Dr. Teray said, we who are truth tellers have to continue to stand, speak out, speak the truth. There's Nanny, there's Nzinga, Harriet Tubman, even the Igbos. Everybody tries to make them look like they're legends that should be in children's books. And like you're saying, and if there is a Anglo author behind it, then that even gets elevated before a movie like Wilmington on Fire or Black Beach, White Beach, or any of these.
Like for example, I'll give a prime example, right? All right. Wilmington on Fire, we've been doing our thing since 2015, right? All right. There's a book out that came out last year called Wilmington's Lie, right? It's written by a white guy, David Zucchino. So, his book kind of gets, elevated a little bit more. But the funny thing about it is he watched the movie, a couple years ago, even before his book came out. Then he was kind of telling people that he never even saw the film. I'm like, dude, I got your receipt from which you ordered the movie like 2 years prior before your book came out. You see what I'm saying? So, these are the things that you have to deal with, as a Black creative. But again, I just try to lean on the strength and, power of my ancestors and just keep it moving.
Yeah, it's just like, for years I've had to deal with people who want to present to me books that are written by Anglo people about Gullah culture. And the other day I walked into an institution, and the first thing somebody working there wanted me to do was know that there's this woman, Olsvig, now that has this book called Growing Up Gullah. She's Anglo. Well, how you know about Growing Up Gullah? It's a choice. And then something called Gullah Tears. And then I find out that they are trying to adapt the Gullah Tears book, which is based on WPA interviews, into a miniseries. Meanwhile, native Gullah Geechees are not brought into discussions of our works being adapted to be miniseries. And then, so then this cycle continues. A lot of people thought that, they'd broken a barrier already with the racism, with the cultural exploitation, with what Dr. Teray is always talking about, this vampirism, this pimping of culture, but that has not ceased from being. So I would encourage, if people are here or watching this on Gullah Geechee TV, saying, well, I watched it because I wanted to learn more about Black representation, know that that's why it's also entitled Amidst Systemic Racism, because that is still a racist act. That instead of you saying, okay, to dismantle racism, then fund the Black people telling their own story. And also don't block the Black truth tellers. Just do that. Like I'm on the James Brown. All right. I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Just open up the door. I'll get it myself. But I don't need you to run in the door ahead of me or usher me in the door. I can communicate and articulate for myself inside that place. So again, we can represent ourselves. We do represent ourselves. Every generation we have had Black representation by Black people, but we haven't had the elevation of that representation for a number of different reasons. So Dr. Teray, what would you say for the generation of folks now that we ought to do. If you're a Black person who really says, well, yes, I'm really now becoming more aware of even some of the names we mentioned today. Already in the chat, we had, what? I'm learning stuff already today, because folks hadn't heard maybe of some of these names, or they heard a name they never heard. They were here in the Gullah Geechee Nation. They didn't hear the links and the connections between all these places we're mentioning, from North Carolina down to the Georgia coast, and what our people did to represent themselves. Give me the top 3 things you would say to another person of African descent in regard to the importance of our own representation and how to support that representation.
Well, I'll throw it out there that one of the things is that you have to seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. You have to seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. It's ongoing, constant, so that way, even you get some information that says one thing, you still filter some other information to not cross-reference that help you with regards to not ascertaining the truth with regards to that. The other thing I'll throw out there and say that we got to love ourselves. We got to love ourselves. And when I say love ourselves, you got to start loving yourself. You got to start loving yourself. I tell folks this. I give them an example. I say, I wake up in the morning, I look in the mirror. Guess what? I love me. I love me. I like me. Okay, I'm not saying I'm all perfect, but guess what? I like me. And because I love me, when I see y'all, guess what? I love y'all too. See, but if I wake up in the morning and I don't like me, guess what? That means I don't like y'all. And so that becomes easy for me to attack you and to cause harm to you, because again, you're nothing because I feel like I'm nothing. Then the other thing is about the economics, as Brother Chris threw out there, just to let you to expand on it. We got to support ourselves economically. We got to support each other economically. We got to do what we can with regard to spending monies in our communities with us, because guess what? And don't come to me about that you went to this Black business and they did you wrong. Guess what? You don't want the Kroger's, you don't want the Publix, you don't want the Walmart, and they did you wrong there too. And guess what? You was right back there. You was at that mechanic shop. You was at Firestone or Goodyear, and they didn't do all the work they need to do. Food Lion too. And so they did you wrong, and you gone, but just because you had an incident with regard to Black folks, but then that's for Black folks who now are operating businesses to understand that we got to show that care and that respect and that love to one another. But we got to spend dollars with us. If we spend dollars with us, guess what? We become an economic power. I'm not talking about spending the dollars outside of us. I'm talking the dollars within our community. We can bring about a couple of $1 million with regards that we spend money just with regards to our own restaurants in our communities, and then get 50 people to do the same thing. So that's why, again, it's about loving yourself. It's about doing the ongoing search for knowledge, and also spending money with us, supporting one another. And that's, even if you can't spend the money, support us, put the word out there, spread the word about Wilmington on Fire, spread the word on the Gullah Geechee, put it out there so people know, and hype it up, because they hype it up. Just like I said, that's why that writer can get that hype. But again, we need to hype us up.
Right.
So
I totally agree with we got to support each other. I'm always a big advocate of Black economics, Black spending power, and just group economics in general. I think that's not going to solve all our problems, but it's going to solve a lot of them. And I think we definitely got to do it. And that's, like I said, that's why I try to do what I'm doing. I never thought that I would actually have a film company, but I said, you know what, this is what I was meant to do, and also meant to help other Black filmmakers as well with their projects also that are really doing some great things. I can't make every film. So if I can help others that are doing some great things, with their film projects, I'm trying to be there for them. So.
Excellent. Yes. And I'm so glad that you're here for all of us, because I'm one of y'all, to help us with these films, to help us with the narrative and making sure the narrative is out there telling the truth. Let folks know, how can they get the first Wilmington on Fire, and when will the second one be out, and how do they follow you to keep up with the different film projects coming out of Speller?
Cool. Yeah. You can go to spellerstreet.com. You can get all the information. You want to contact me through whether it's cell phone, email, social media, spellerstreet.com. Also, if they want to watch Wilmington on Fire, 3 places you can check it out digitally. One is Amazon Prime. I know everyone has Amazon out there. You can check it out on Amazon. But if you want to keep it Black owned, just like what we were talking about, you can also watch it on Quelle TV. It's Quelle TV, sister out of Maryland. Deshuna Spencer, Black-owned streaming service, lovely sister. I love what she's doing. So we're also on there as well. So we'd rather you go there first, but I know how some people are, we still, westernized. So if you want to go to Amazon, it's cool as well. So it all, helps support what we're doing. And also just check out Quelle TV, check it out on there. And also she has some other amazing titles as well by other Black filmmakers. So yeah, check us out, spellerstreet.com, wilmingtononfire.com as well.
And also Wilmington on Fire. Oh, is it Wilmington on Fire 1898 on Twitter?
yeah, Wilmington 1898 on Twitter, Speller Street on Twitter as well. And we're also on Instagram. And Instagram is Wilmington on Fire and Speller Street Films. Also, Wilmington on Fire Chapter 2, we're finishing that up right now. And we should be screening that, I would say, next spring. So spring 2022.
Excellent. So yeah, we're gonna have a whole Gullah Geechee Film Fest. And I have my film.
Let's do it.
Yours.
Yeah, let's do it.
We're doing the whole thing. We're gonna bring Brother Ricky Kelly back again.
Yeah.
We just loved when we got the screen Black Beach, White Beach. That's another one y'all can go watch on the channels that Brother Christopher just gave out. And for those of you who are like me that have a DVD collection, you can purchase these films.
Yeah, spellstreet.com, wilmingtononfire.com as well. If you're old school and want the DVD, you can go to wilmingtononfire.com and order a DVD as well.
Absolutely. And Dr. Teray, we know we can find you at Day Clean Soul. And again, we're talking about economic empowerment. We know Day Clean Soul does historic preservation work, but also presentation work, and that you also have the tour company. So why don't you tell the folks a bit about that and how they can reach you?
Yes, indeed, because the African spirit of Day Clean, Day Clean Soul, we travel around the world. Wherever people want us to go, we can give part of the history and the culture of African people, and and then make the connections. That's what we do, and that's Day Clean Soul. We have Geechee Kunda in Riceboro, Georgia. That's our museum, the epicenter for Gullah Geechee culture in the United States. And then also Day Clean Journeys. That's our tour company that we provide tours here in the Savannah area on a daily basis. But again, we travel, go where people want to go. And I'll throw this out there, like I share folks is that I tell them that southeastern North Carolina, which is Wilmington, Edenton, Beaufort, all that, that's where we see the first African holiday being celebrated. And that's tied to the Gullah Geechee nation, tied to us right there. That's why southeastern North Carolina got to be down with coastal Georgia and southern South Carolina with regard to Savannah and Hilton Head. Ain't no joke. We all connected.
But definitely, that's part of the fun and the tradition. And definitely, I'm so happy to have y'all here. I mean, I feel like I'm feeling y'all right here. One to the right, one to the left. North Kakalaki, Georgia, right down in South Kakalaki. We got it going on, and we got others in the family that's here in the audience. We thank y'all for coming to share this time with us. And just, beating the drums as we in February, because every day a day for celebrate who we be. And I'm Queen Quet. I'm head Pundabody of the Gullah Geechee Nation. If you're looking for me, you can find me at queenquet.com. So QUEEN.com, and we will rebroadcast this show like we do all of our others on gullahgeechee.tv. gullahgeechee.tv, GULLAH ain't no I and Geechee if it a we. You can also find us at Gullah Geechee on Twitter, at Gullah Geechee on Instagram, and follow GullahGeecheeNation.com. So whenever there are film showings that are definitely things that are uplifting, that are telling our story, we share those things so that people are well aware of the things we're producing, the books that are coming out, the tour businesses, the farms you should support, the various ways in which we can empower each other economically. We blog about it, we share about it, and most of all, we go and spend money with one another. So again, follow GullahGeecheeNation.com, at Gullah Geechee on Twitter, at Gullah Geechee on Instagram, and also support the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition. Anyone in the world can be a member of the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition that helps sponsor this broadcast. Go to gullahgeechee.net for more information, and you can go to gullahgeechee.biz and obtain membership, books, CDs, and DVDs that talk about our story, our legacy, so that every day, all year, you can read, you can study, you can share, you can dialogue, and you definitely need to care about who we be down here. And I want to thank everyone watches the show that is donated to the Gullah Geechee Land and Legacy Fund. It's an ongoing fundraiser to keep we land and things like that. Because we gotta have business and thing if we ain't got no land. Okay? How wanna go out nation you ain't got no land. So we have a whole pun. So thank you to all of you. You can go to GoFundMe to the Gullah Geechee Land and Legacy Fund. And those who use Cash App, just do $ Gullah Geechee Nation. $ Gullah Geechee Nation and donate there. And I want to definitely tell you all, this is not the end. The drums have not been silenced. Coming up on Saturday, 1 p.m. on a channel called A Growing Culture, and also a Facebook page called A Growing Culture, as well as a page called Africa Week 2020. There will be a live broadcast. It's going to be a 2-hour family reunion of Mother Africa that will be taking place. I am opening with the libation ceremony and the drum call, and will be there with family and revolutionaries from throughout the African diaspora and from Mother Africa in celebration of who we be, and letting people know Black history is still being made as we live. It's not just in the books. It's not just in the archives. We be Black history. So when I look at you and I see me, that right there is the major part of the journey. So I'm gonna give y'all just a couple chances to just give some final words of inspiration to the audience. Brother Christopher.
I just want to say, thank you again for having me on your platform. And also you, Brother Jamal. It was a pleasure, listening to you speak true. Reach out to me anytime, and I'm gonna do the same thing, because I definitely want to pick your brain as well. I just like, just chopping it up and getting this knowledge from people that are older than me, and just learning from you guys, because y'all been there and done it, and y'all are where I'm trying to go. So again, thank you for having me on your platform, and everyone check out Wilmington on Fire.
Yes, been there, done it, doing it and doing it and doing it well, like LL Cool J said. And the only way to do it is to do it properly. Yeah, so go ahead, Dr. Teray. Any final words for the family?
Yes, I'll say this: uplift. We must uplift one another, lift up each other, lift up what we're doing, love one another, have that appreciation for one another, and let us all come together as one when they try to come against us. And that's what we do as a family, because that's what we are, a family, and much pride. And one thing I forgot to tell you, people want to contact me. My number is 912-220-5966. Dayclean, HHI@yahoo.com, but 912-220-5966. Again, uplift one another, love one another. We are here for one another.
Definitely. We are here today because we definitely a family, and we do love each other. And that's part of the healing process, is laughing, being able to have a good time. And we always love doing that. And so it's such a blessing to have Hunter chilling right here with we underneath this your virtual oak tree, that you know who we be. We be Gullah Geechee anointed people. We wish you peace, love, blessings, health, and safety to the whole family. Peace and love, everybody.
Blessings, yes indeed.
Peace.